So, I graduated a little bit before you. But I do have to say that, full disclosure, I am not a graduate of CCNY. In fact, I've met the CCNY family only a couple weeks ago, and I have to say that certainly being very humbled and honored to be part of the family here. Looking back at my college education, although happy about it, I probably may would have been a little bit happier here. Just the support and the people and the experience and the breadth of knowledge that the staff and associations here have are absolutely extraordinary. So, just by a show of hands, who here has ever been to a, excluding this one, who here has been to a networking event? Okay, keep your hands up. Who's ever been to a successful networking event? Okay, so it's about half and half. Out of the 50% that's left, how many of those people are you still in touch with? Wow, 1. Okay, 2. So anybody have any suggestions or any insight as to why, out of all the networking events that you've attended, only 2 of you have actually followed up with or are in contact with anybody? Any thoughts? Go ahead.
Genuine connection and genuine questions. If you have those things, we can continue a conversation after. You also have to have an end goal.
So before you go to a networking event or before you meet somebody at a cocktail, do you actually go in a premeditated fashion?
No, because then I sound scripted. But I do read about who's supposed to be in the event, why the event is happening, and what that means for me.
Mm-hmm.
So why am I attending? Other than to just like get names, it has to be something different than get names and numbers.
So it has to be relevant, and the networking that you do, it's obviously, it sounds like there's research before it, because your time is your money. You're not going to go to a meetup or to a networking event in the cooking space or something that's not really, I'm not sure if you're cooking or not, but to a place that that it's not relevant. So I would say that I've spent the greater part of the past 15 years of my career truly networking. I've gone to networking events where there were thousands of people. I've gone to networking events where there was just me, myself, and I in a bar, and looking around, and I was the only one that showed up. So I've run the gamut, and I don't want to say I figured it out, but I've learned to spend my time more wisely. I know there's a lot of people out there. I'm not sure how many people there are in this room that are unhappy with their jobs, but I could tell you in most of America, I think it's 75% of Americans today are just not happy with what they're doing, and they feel that although they're gainfully employed, they could be happily gainfully employed. And especially given the fact that you guys are in New York, the ability to network here, if you're out in Wichita, Kansas, the ability to network there is extremely limited, and the diversity of the people there are very, very different than there is in New York. And I can tell you that you do the research in New York, there's just a vast array of networking events. A couple of quick takeaway points that I would tell you is don't go to networking events that are on the back of a bar. There's probably a very good chance that it's probably not the best setting for it. The second thing, do your research before you go to the event, seeing the ones that are relevant. Third is go to the ones that are also paid, if you can. If it costs some money, there's usually this reason why, and there's actually I found that there's a lot of value there. And the formula we have in our office, we go to a lot of conference and trade shows, a lot of networking events, and we have a formula. It's called the FU formula. Does anyone know what it stands for? Aside from the obvious, no one. It's follow-up. How many times have you met someone and you didn't send an email or you didn't connect with them on LinkedIn? And that's just what I call the wasted contact. I met a great person of potential. Maybe short term I can't figure out how I could either leverage that relationship, build that relationship. You know what? You need to keep that card and you must follow up with that person. So that's our FU formula. Wanted to throw out to the audience, I guess I wanted to share 30 seconds about my background. And I did a switch of careers about halfway through. My background is finance and technology. Decided that really I wasn't so into tech, and I really enjoyed television and media. And 2008, I was on a date. It seems like it always happens in a date in a bar, and somehow there's some alcohol involved. But I was in a bar, and I was on a date, and I met a woman who I think I walked by and I made a joke. It was a stupid joke. I think she thought it was funny, and then she chased me to the bathroom, and she didn't go into the bathroom with me, you know. And she goes, sir. I was like, I'm on a date, not really appropriate, but I'll take your number. She goes, no, you got the wrong idea. So I said, of course. She goes, I'm a producer, and I'm launching a business network. This was in 2008, and I need to get a warm body in. So I said, well, I'm not really an expert. I can't really speak on anything. She goes, don't worry. She's like, the network is new. No one's really listening. So, I said, what do I talk about? She says, it doesn't really matter. She's like, again, like, all right. I was like, just, precursor. Last time I was on TV was, I think it was Sesame Street or Romper Room. She goes, again, same audience, Turned out it was Fox Business Network, and that was in, so it's progressed a little bit, not much, depending if you're a fan or not. But that was my first, in 2008, that was my first foray into networking and into building relationships and taking certain risks out there. I've never done TV, I've never done radio yet. I said, sure, let me try it. And I failed for 2008, 2009, 2010. It was mistake after mistake after mistake. But I got the value of networking, of building relationships with producers and networks and making those kind of special connections. And 5 years later, I'm now on almost daily between CNN, CNBC, Fox News, covering technology, which I still really don't know what that is, and new media and social media. So I spent a great deal of time monetizing my network also. And I found that if you could become a source, you build yourself as an expert in, you fill in that blank, and provide yourself as a leading resource to people, to friends, to family, you start building that trust, and people will come back to you. So my experience with networking, although in the beginning was extremely challenging, at the end it's a work in progress, but it's proven to be a real asset. So I wanted to throw out to you guys any questions or any comments that you have. And you guys can make it up so you don't make me feel bad, anyone. I will leave you, go ahead, yes, George.
Can you explain more about being a leading source of...
Yes. So what did you major in?
Major in media.
Okay. Are you currently working?
Yes.
You are. What do you work for?
I work not in my field, but it's construction.
In construction. Okay. But you said electrical engineer. Do you have a specialty, or do you have an interest in a certain area?
Yeah, communications.
Communications? Got it. So why can't, especially TV, Americans just love and consume TV. It's whether it's true or not, most of it's not true. But when you're on television, you're considered an expert. I don't really know what that means. But positioning and branding you, George, as an expert in electrical engineering or an expert in communications, the way to do it is to start blogging and to start writing and to start building a social following. Then all of a sudden, over time, if your writing is good, the community starts to look at you and goes, oh yeah, George, he's a source. So it's more of a marketing branding strategy to position you as an expert in your field. So, I know you had a question, Andy.
I did have one. When you go to a networking event,
Yes.
there's a balance between speaking about yourself and hearing what other people are saying,
Right.
so you can make a good connection. Do you find that there's a certain amount of balance you have to have between the two, or do you prefer one over the other?
Good question. So I usually have nothing intelligent to say. So I always like asking the questions and listening, because I get a lot more value, I think, in listening. But I think listening is important too. There's a form of connection in listening and then repurposing and then saying those things back to the person so the person knows that you're actually listening. So I think there's a balance. Me personally, though, maybe if I'm nervous, I would speak a little bit more, but I think I learn a lot more by listening. But that's definitely, it's a good question. I also say after you meet somebody, I interviewed somebody recently for a position in my company, and she didn't get the job. But what was fascinating for me was that she sent me a follow-up, not a follow-up email or a follow-up phone call, but a follow-up handwritten note. And I called her and I said, look, I've never really seen that before. She said, seen what? She goes, well, I'll get a phone call, I'll get an email, I'll get an inappropriate text, get a message, I'll get some skywriting. But I said, I've never ever, nobody's ever really sat down and wrote a personalized note. And I said, it's sitting in my desk. And I said, I have to tell you something. I said, you weren't a good fit for the position, but I want you to know something. I'm going to recommend you to somebody else. And subsequently, that she got hired because of that. So it's that going that extra step and trying to differentiate yourself. So whether it's coming up with an innovative business card that you could leave or leaving that handwritten note, but doing something that will differentiate you after the networking event that I think really makes a difference. So, yeah, Jason.
How do you continue a relationship after a follow-up or a thank you note?
So it's a good question. What I do right away is that as soon as an email comes in, I try my best to respond as soon as possible. But there are programs out there, I don't know if you're familiar with Reportive. It's a Gmail widget extension that sits on the side of your email, which is amazing. The minute they email you, it pops up and it shows you what network they're connected to. So if they're on Twitter, if they're on LinkedIn, if they're on Facebook. So right away it comes up and I'll send them a LinkedIn request. Or I'll send them a Twitter request, or if it's appropriate or inappropriate, I'll send them a Facebook request. So that's one way how I start leveraging social media. And today I have about 23,000 LinkedIn connections. All people that I've either, and I didn't purchase any of these friends yet, but all people that I've either met, spoke with, or emailed over the past 10, 15 years. So that network started to build organically. And I think Twitter I have about 14,000. So I built a pretty decent sized network. But you're right, the challenge is how does it not become a time sap, and how do you keep up with these people where it's relevant, where at the end of the day, you want to figure out how to leverage your contacts or to monetize your base. And that's the challenge. I think about it all the time. So,
can you give an example of how you've used one of those 14,000 contacts?
yeah, it's 22,547, but I'm not gonna. Yeah, so I'll have I only know 3 of them, and 2 of them are over here. So I'll have people coming to me in the real estate space, and they'll say, hey, I'm looking for some office space. Do you know somebody? So either I'll post it on LinkedIn, asking for anybody to have extra office space. I'll broker a building. I'll put 2 people in touch that are looking to buy and sell product. So yeah, I mean, mining the data, mining LinkedIn data is a whole science in itself, but I've definitely made money through some of my connections. I've also gotten into a lot of fights with you. Why did you introduce me to this guy? He's a crook, but for the most, it has to happen. It's a numbers game, but it's figuring out what to do with these contacts. And the beautiful thing is anybody can do it. Anyone could go to a networking event. Anybody could, I think, build those relationships, especially if you don't feel comfortable doing it personally, at least via social media, to start building up your base. And then once you build up your base, and then you bring in George, George is now the expert in electrical engineering in the communication space for North America.
And don't forget, George, if you tell me you're an expert in electrical engineering, I'm going to believe you till you prove me wrong.
Right? Who's going to argue with an expert?
Who's going to argue?
Right? Especially on TV. So. It's hard. So you have the look. I would use it if there's a job that you feel so connected to that you think it's a perfect match. One email many times is not enough, because I know a lot of executives and CEOs just don't have the time to respond. But if it shows up in their mailbox, once every 3-4 days, and you get their attention, and you put catchy, funny subject lines, which I find also sometimes, some people don't like it, but I see the persistence there, and I think it takes two things. I think it's persistence and patience. You could reach out to them by email. I wouldn't obviously do the Twitter or the Facebook. I wouldn't text them either. But a catchy subject line. If you could find a common connection between the two of them to do what's called a warm introduction. And what I've seen and what I've recommended other partners to do also is don't send your resume. And the way to position it is you're interested in learning more about your company. Or I had a couple of questions. Do you have a couple of minutes I could chat with you on the phone? So there's no sell. So the guy on the other end doesn't feel like he has to do something for you, because he doesn't know you. Maybe he'll forward your resume on to HR, but chances are he won't. But if you find out what he's interested in, if he's an avid skier, if he's into bowling, if there's a way that you can reach out to him and ask him, find what his sweet spot is, find some sort of connection over there, and at least start the dialogue, that's actually, you'd be way ahead of the game to find that common denominator and that connection. That's a challenge with a lot of people. How do you connect with people? How do you find out what their passions are, their interests are? But it's a good question. So I would start with a non-reaching out approach, finding what their personal interests are and figuring out a way how to connect to them. And then I would send a letter. I wouldn't even do an email. I found those to be really interesting. Even a handwritten letter attached with your resume. It's different. Yes?
Are you Michelle Bushman?
Yes.
Yes.
So Michelle reached out to me via LinkedIn, and thank you for that. You wrote me a beautiful LinkedIn message even before we met, and that's something that I'll always remember too. My connection with you, you don't know it yet, but I spent a lot of time in Haiti before the earthquake, and then I was in Port-au-Prince a couple of days right after the earthquake, and I worked with President Proval also at the time, and so we share a common denominator there. So.
I was about to ask you what's your passion, but I think I got it here.
You got it. I think my passion is people, connecting with people. But I love business also and trying to figure out how to help people work with people and also obviously make some money. So, but I appreciate that message. It's a beautiful message. So.
Thank you very much.
Of course. I'm available. I'm also opening up my office to anyone here. My office is on 33rd and 9th, between 9th and 10th in Midtown. I'll give everyone my card here. You're all welcome to come by my office to meet my staff. I'm happy to open my Rolodex to you as well. But more importantly, I'm interested in getting to know you guys. So I'm available, and it was great to meet everybody. And the last thing I'd say is that, talk about the networks. I'd say by far the most powerful network that you're ever going to touch upon is your college network and is your alumni base. I know Therese was talking about before giving $10. If you give $5 a month, $10 a month, I'm almost certain it's going to go a very long way, because now you have access to the alumni base, and those are the people I think that you should reach out to also to further your career. And the staff and the